So many iconic films that you've made. Deliverance is a movie that I've always wanted to talk to you about because it's one of my favorite all-time films. And I'm curious, do you think that Deliverance could be made today? There's something to me about that film. It feels like it could only have been made during that period in the 70s.
I think you're right. John Boorman, who was an Irish director, the best director I ever had, said, where am I going to find these guys?
These are the guys to play the hill people.
The mountain men.
The mountain men.
Yeah. And I said, I know a guy. He can't read and he can't write or anything, but I'm telling you, if we can get him, we got something special. So I said, let me bring him in. His name's Cowboy, and he'll just talk to you, and you see if you like him. So he came in, and he said, did you tell him I can't read? I said, yes, I told him that. We started with that scene.
Which scene particularly are we talking about?
The scene where he says he's got a mighty pretty mouth.
Yeah. And you thought that scene would end your career, potentially?
I thought it was going to be close, because I hadn't done anything like that. Mm-hmm. Nobody had.
Yeah, no, I was going to say nobody had made that.
I mean, I look at that movie and I look at the acting that Ned Beatty did in that film.
He should have been nominated.
It's one of the most amazing scenes.
Yeah.
And I've watched that movie so many times, and one of the things I love so much about it is some of the ambiguity, and some of the ambiguity about human emotion in that film is so powerful.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
And we had 2 weeks of rehearsal where we all just sort of were together. And we got together every day, all day.
But we would sit for hours and we'd talk about our relationship, but then we talk about, did our parents know each other? And how did we get to be friends? And I mean, we wrote a novel. John did anyway, and I tried to help.
So Jim came up and sat in the bar, and he had this booming voice and this powerful presence. He was very intimidating.
And Dickie always called us by our character names. And he went, Lewis, I'm talking to you, boy. Come over here. And the girl said, I think Mr. Dickie wants you. And I said, you ain't talking to me. My name ain't Lewis. My name is Burton. And then he got up, and I could feel him coming, you know. And I was sitting in a bar stool. Now, a bar stool was pretty tall. And he was so big that he stood up over me, and his hands down like this on the bar, and his head was still here. And he went, now, Lewis, I was talking to you, boy. I asked you to come over there. I want to talk to you. I said, Mr. Dickie, I'm not Lewis. I'm Bert now. Tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, I'll be Lewis. But now, get out of my goddamn face. And there was a quiet little moment there where I thought, possibly he will kill me or cut me. And he went, that's exactly what Lewis would have said. And then he went back over and drove them crazy for the rest of the evening. Never bothered me again.
Hello everybody and welcome to Film Gold episode 24. This is a very short intro to tell you that this is another collaboration, a semi-swap cast, let's call it, with Scott Phipps from the Stinking Paws and Real Britannia podcasts. If you remember, the last two episodes of Film Gold were Scott and I collaborating, doing a special about Michael Caine, who at that time was just turning 90. Scott's in charge of this one, so this is us on the Stinking Paws. About a month ago, we recorded this film review. What you will get from this review, I think, is how much both of us absolutely love this film. No film is perfect, but as far as films about canoeing trips that go wrong go, this is pretty damn good. And both of us in preparation, I think we may say this on the recording you're about to hear, we found so many other layers to this film as we were doing our research for the podcast. So I think you're going to really love this. And this is a film, obviously, from an era that Scott and I have talked about many times and both love. Anyway, I don't really need to say any more because all will be explained when you listen to the recording. So I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Scott on the Stinky Paws with me doing a review of Deliverance. And I'll see you soon or when I see you for the next episode of Film Gold. So all the best and enjoy.
You want to talk about the vanishing wilderness?
Lewis, listen, why are you so anxious about this?
Because they're building a dam across the Cahulawassee River. They're going to flood a whole valley, Bobby. That's why. Damn it, they're drowning the river. They're drowning the river, man.
All right,
Drowning.
all right.
Just about to what?
All right. We're talking to you.
All right. Just about the last wild, untamed, unpolluted, unfucked up river in the South. Don't you understand what I'm saying?
We understand what you're saying.
Stop the river up. There ain't gonna be no more river. It's just gonna be a big,
Watch
dead
progress.
lake. Progress? That's shit.
It's a very clean way of making electric power. And those lakes up there provide a lot of people with recreation.
I don't give a shit.
My father-in-law has a houseboat over on Lake Bowie.
Oh, that's a nice place.
You just push a little more power. You push a little more power into Atlanta, a little more air conditioners for your smug little suburb, and you know what's gonna happen? We're gonna rape this whole goddamn landscape. We're gonna rape it.
Oh, Lewis, my...
That's an extreme point of view, Lewis.
It is.
An extremist.
Roll sound, Scotty.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
It's the Stinking Paws podcast, celebrating our 10th anniversary, and it's one of those special episodes where we've invited guests back onto the show to go back and select movies that we've reviewed previously over the last 10 years. There's a bit of a theme running through some of these, you'll find out as we get further into the year. And for the purposes of tonight's entertainment, I've asked our dear friend, it's the host of Film Gold, Glass Onion on John Lennon, and Life and Life Only. It's our good friend Anthony. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. Back again. How many collaborations have we done now? We're just racking up.
What, for the 10th anniversary?
Or just in general, we must have done 20 or 30 now, haven't we?
Yeah, it's been a while over the last 4 or 5 years, like quite a few now, mate. So
yeah.
It's becoming a regular habit and a very pleasant one, mate. And I'm very pleased to say you have chosen a film. I just looked back to when we first reviewed it. It was September 2014.
Ooh.
So it was right near the beginning. You know, it's only about 9 years old, 8.5 years old since we reviewed it. I'm pretty sure I haven't watched it since our original review, but we reviewed it with guests back then as well. So it's just a two-hander, this one, just me and you. It's Deliverance, 1972. Now, if you hadn't selected this, I would have picked it somewhere along the line, mate, because I would desperately want to go back to what. Before we go, why have you? You obviously love the movie.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, I should tell you, it places at number 11 on my flick chart out of 1,520 something. So it's a big favourite. I don't know. I mean, we always have to mention Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, don't we? This is just planted. Although it's actually kind of a traditional story at the same. Well, it's not really. It could be. It's a traditional. No, it's not a traditional. Yeah, let's rewind. Can we rewind that? Yes. No, it's another one I saw as a kid. I always have to credit my dad. It's not that my dad necessarily kind of turned me on to Taxi Driver and Deliverance and all this. He just didn't stop me watching them. I don't
remember how old you were, by the way, because I've got a story about that as well. How old were you?
Blimey. I wouldn't know exactly. Probably only about 14 or 15. I don't think this was a movie drome. It wasn't a movie drome, but it was in that kind of... I always credit movie drome for just expanding my interest, and it was somewhere around there, 14, 15. Yeah. And I couldn't tell you how many times I've seen it. Again, as with so many of the ones we've reviewed, I watched it to death at the time, but then I haven't seen it too many times since then. So I know it very well, but then watching it you know, I love all the director commentaries and everything. So it's almost like a whole different experience watching it with the director guiding you. So
yeah, I haven't gone that deep into it this time because there's such a gap between my last viewing and this that I just wanted to cherish watching it once again as it's, you know, intended to be seen. I did a little bit of a check. Remember I introduced you to the BBC Genome site where you can go back through old TV listings and stuff like that?
Yeah, I've been looking at that, yes.
Yeah, and I thought, right, when was it premiered, you know, on the BBC? So I remember it being on BBC. And it was much later than I thought. I think I found out it was a Sunday evening in late 1985.
Yeah.
So I would have been 16. And it was in that Sunday evening slot that Moviedrome traditionally took, but they were doing a Burt Reynolds season on Sunday evenings at the time. And I'm pretty sure I must have seen it, but my memory is telling me I watched it when I was 11, 12, you know, that sort of age. Which sort of shocked me in a while because I honestly thought this movie had been with me a lot longer and I'd seen it far too young. Watching it at, say, 16, as I probably was, not a bad age to watch it. You know, it's probably a little bit too young if, you know, there are people out there that believe in that sort of thing. But for me and you, when we were on this journey of discovery of what makes a great movie, possibly the right age to have a little look and make our own mind up. And I was just totally, as you say as well, in awe of the movie. And I think I recorded it. I may have recorded it on its second run. I definitely bought the video when it came out and watched it and watched it and watched it. Deservedly a classic. We've got a lot to talk about.
Yes.
And we're not going to dwell too heavily on the two scenes. Most people tend to like. This is the thing. When I've mentioned we've been doing it, everybody has gone, oh, either dueling banjos or squeal like a pig.
Yeah.
Everybody. Nobody has mentioned any of the other wonderful stuff that we've seen, and we desperately need to talk about it.
Can I just say one thing about that? This is a little bit of a moan. The Squeal Like a Pig, it's the equivalent of Elvis dying on the toilet. When people think of Elvis, you know, I don't want to speak for the masses because we don't know who they are, but people will say, oh, Elvis, he died on the toilet. And it's a bit like that. It's reducing what I think is just an unbelievably good filmic achievement down to that. And it's just something that happens, isn't it?
Exactly. But we are going to mention them because they are a vital point of the story. But there is so much more to this. What we're going to do, there's a wonderful trailer out there, very 70s. Let's play that now. We'll be back after
this. Trailer. Where are you going, city boy? We'll find it.
It ain't nothing but the biggest river in the state.
These are the men. Nothing very unusual about them. Suburban guys like you or your neighbor. Nothing very unusual about them until they decided to spend one weekend canoeing down the Cahulawassee River. Ed Gentry, he runs an art service. Wife Martha has a boy, Dee. Lewis Medlock has real estate interests. Talks about resettling in New Zealand or Uruguay. Drew Ballinger, he's sales supervisor for a soft drink company. Bobby Trippe, bachelor, insurance and mutual funds.
Where you going? All right, I'm looking.
These are the men who decided not to play golf that weekend. Instead, they sought the river.
Would you like to check it out? You, Lewis.
He could be out there anywhere, watching us right now. We ain't gonna be so hard to follow, dragging a corpse.
Lewis, I'm gonna pull off to the side. There's something wrong.
No, go on!
John Boorman's film of James Dickey's explosive best-selling novel.
Deliverance, released in the UK 1972, directed by John Boorman, written by James Dickey and screenplay by John Boorman, starring John Voight, Burt Reynolds, Ned Beatty and Ronnie Cox, your four main leads here, although the supporting cast are definitely going to get a mention at some point. The synopsis, for those of you that haven't seen it: Deliverance remains one of the screen's most powerful man versus nature adventures and was a motion picture shocker of the 1970s. Shocker's a good way of describing it, actually, rather than horror, yes. It's the story of four Atlanta weekend warriors who set off in canoes down a dangerous Georgia river and discover a wilderness of terror. Directed by John Boorman in 1972 and adapted by James Dickey from his novel, Deliverance was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. Burt Reynolds, John Voight, Ned Beatty and Ronnie Cox star as the four friends whose canoeing weekend turns into a horrifying test of survival. Boorman's taut direction builds the tension and fear to a raging climax as the men travel way beyond their comfort zone and are forced to face more than they could ever have imagined. Vilmos Zsigmond's expert cinematography captures the wilderness of forest and river, while Eric Weisberg's classical musical theme, Dueling Banjos, provides a perfect counterpoint to the action.
Do you know what you've just done, Scott? You've just summarised my 8 pages of notes in about 3 lines. I've got nothing to say now.
That's a good starting point for you to build on there, my friend. That's what we're going to do.
Yes. No, that's a very good synopsis.
Do you know where I got that from? It's the synopsis from the DVD review on Amazon.
Oh, is it? Damn, you should have said you'd written it. I'd have been.
No, I won't take credit. Normally, the IMDb ones are so shit, we have to find alternatives. And that was a little one that jumped out on me earlier today.
One of my, just before you carry on, one of my trivia questions, I mean, you will obviously know what beat this for Best Picture, right?
It's with your favourite, your man, isn't it?
My man.
It's Godfather, isn't it? 72.
Yeah. But weirdly enough, I always thought Coppola won for director, but he didn't. It was Bob Fosse for Cabaret. And the editing also won for Cabaret. So this lost 2 to Cabaret and 1 to Godfather, which is quite interesting.
You know the other Godfather connection to this movie?
Oh, go on. Let me think. No, I don't.
Burt Reynolds was originally considered for the role of Sonny.
I thought it was Michael.
No, I'm pretty sure it's Sonny.
It should be Sonny. It can't be Corleone.
And I think Brando pretty much said he would refuse to do the movie if Reynolds was cast.
Absolutely. Well, when we get to casting, I don't want to give too much away, but Brando does figure there.
Oh, okay.
Burt Reynolds was also considered for Rocky, wasn't he, 4 years later? So we can't take all these casting choices.
That's true. Yeah, it was only Stallone that stuck to his guns, wasn't it?
That would have been quite amusing, wouldn't it?
So, initial thoughts and feedback on this viewing, mate, because you haven't watched it for a little while. Do you actually watch it with the commentary? You've only watched it the once this time with a commentary version, not just as it stands, yeah?
Yes, my modus operandi, being a professional podcaster, professional without the money, that is, of course, as you are as well, professional.
Absolutely.
What I do, I mean, when it's a film that I already know, and I know this film very well, I watch the director commentary, obviously, if there is one, but I have the subtitles of the film going, so it's a bit of a double whammy. I can kind of follow the film. Yeah. And the funny thing about it is that if you ever watch something with subtitles, I used to have a Japanese girlfriend, just by the way. It was around the time when DVDs were first coming out. When you watch something with subtitles, even though you wouldn't normally, because you speak English, it does change it a little bit. You focus a bit more on it, when they're up there on the screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a nice viewing, and John Boorman he had loads of good stories and stuff. And
I'm imagining the actual dialogue itself. It wasn't particularly dialogue heavy until the first mountain man gets killed, because there's this. I want to talk about that scene afterwards.
Yes.
There's more to that scene and that whole dialogue that goes on between the four of them after they rescue John Voight.
Yes.
That really stuck out for me, and I'm thinking, right, so that's a perfect example of the screenwriting there, because the rest of it is lots of shouting and screaming and general sort of commentary, but that really stood out as part of the screenplay this time for me.
Now, there was a line I really liked. There's a couple of lines from Lewis about Reynolds. Sometimes you have to lose yourself before you can find anything.
Oh, does that sound a bit too cheesy though, and unrealistic?
A bit on the nose, perhaps. Yes,
yeah.
Yes. But the one I really liked was, the opening scene. So you see them driving, and you can hear them talking. You can't.
It starts off with Burt Reynolds' famous laugh, doesn't it, as they're driving along? You probably didn't hear it if you had the commentary go, but that classic Burt Reynolds laugh. He's laughing as they're driving along. Yeah.
But he's talking about the damming of the river.
Yes.
And very interesting, he talks about the river being raped. Bit of foreshadowing there.
Oh, yes, I did catch that. Yeah.
Yes. But the line I love, he says to the others, "Don't worry, I'll have you back in your nice suburban house in time to see the football on Sunday afternoon."
Brilliant. Now, you mentioned off there about the four characters potentially being four facets to James Dickey's character. Now, thinking on what you just threw at me when the mics were switched off. So I'm assuming like Burt Reynolds is the adventurer, the one that's, taking all the risks. You're going to have to correct me on this, because this is just me thinking out loud here.
Yeah.
John Voight is going along for the ride because he's curious. He's the settled family man. But at the same time, he doesn't want to lose the friendship that he's got with these other guys, and he's still just a bit intrigued. And the other two out there for the romance and the adventure.
I mean, I had no idea. I mean, this is not something I would have come up with at all. Yeah. Lewis is the macho man. Ed, the funny thing is, Dickey, I'd like to talk about Dickey in a bit, if you don't mind. Dickey was an ad executive, and in the novel, which I haven't read, which I really would like to, Ed, the John Voight character, is an ad executive. Right. So that's the link. And Drew is obviously a guitarist, and I think apparently that's the artistic side of James Dickey, because he's a writer. It wasn't really clear what the Ned Beatty, it says here, I've got here aggressive and cowardly. I don't think those are my words, but yeah, I don't think that part was clear, but James Dickey was just an incredible.
Yeah, I wouldn't describe Ned Beatty's character as either aggressive or cowardly.
Yeah, I mean, those are their words, He's not really cowardly, is he? I'd say he's more kind of smug, isn't he? He's very superior to the hillbillies.
He's got the big mouth that gets him into trouble, which I can imagine happens when he's back home as well, in a lot of situations in bars and things like that, possibly.
Yeah, and there's a good scene where, they pair up for the canoeing, and Burt Reynolds calls him chubby, and he's sort of having a go at him the whole day, and the next day he says to Ed, he says, "Your friend was shouting at me. I'm not used to it, Ed." So you get the idea that he's a person who's very in control of what he's doing, and he's very much a fish out of water,
You picking up things this time round that you've missed last time, because I thought I knew this film inside out, upside down, back to front. And there were little things like that I was picking up on myself. And even without the benefit of the commentary, which is going to give you all that extra inside information, I'm just sitting there watching this and thinking, wow, I'd seen that but didn't realise that was going on, or why did I miss this? One particular bit, when, I know we're sort of jumping ahead and we will keep going backwards and forwards, but when John Voight climbs up the side of the cliff, and he falls asleep and he's leaning up against the rock, and I remember that the toothless mountain guy is going to appear at any minute at some point behind him. I remembered that happening. And when it actually happened, and you look at it, it looks as if he's walking on top of the rock itself that John Voight's head's leaning up against. So it looks like he's only about 6 inches tall. It looks like he's a little, and it doesn't look, the perspective of it doesn't look like he's in the distance. And I'm thinking, that is brilliant. I don't know if that was deliberate or not. And then also, after I saw that, I'm thinking, right, does he kill him, doesn't he? And in my head, I'm picturing something to do with his teeth. And of course, there's the bit where he thinks he's killed the wrong guy because he's got his false teeth back in at this time. Again, we sort of jumping way ahead here. The build up to the canoes must take a good 15 minutes in a movie that only runs hour and 45. And the ending takes up a lot longer than I previously remembered. You know, the bit when they're rescued or when they get to the shore sort of thing. So in reality, the actual canoeing rapid scene, the whole crux of the story, it's about an hour and 15.
Yeah.
But that, when you think about it, is an hour and 15 minutes of solid action, visual entertainment, drama, horror, as you said. It's quite horrific. Tension, edge of the seats, all of that sort of stuff. And I was still feeling all of those emotions the 20th time I watched it.
Yes.
And I could quite easily sit and watch it again. Now, quite easily, happily. I'll probably watch it with a commentary next time I do watch it.
You should, yeah.
Yeah, we fucked up.
You better let them show us.
You're missing the whole point, Ed.
Where are you going, city boy?
We'll find it.
It ain't nothing but the biggest fucking river in the state.
Lewis, you son of a bitch, why do we have to go so damn fast?
You're gonna like it, Ed. You see the river, you're gonna like it.
Jesus Christ!
Lewis!
You're gonna kill us both, you son of a bitch, before we ever see you in the water! Slow it down, Lewis, come on.
Here we go.
Come on, up over there.
Listen, Ed. Listen. Here. Sometimes you have to lose yourself before you can find anything.
Any snakes around here?
This is the one. There she is.
Looks good. Looks good.
Couple more months, she'll all be gone.
Even up as far as here?
From Main Tree on up.
Lewis!
One big, dead lake.
The beginning, you get this wonderful thing. And I just mentioned to you again off air that you weren't aware of. Burt Reynolds was a stuntman prior to becoming like a full-time actor. And I'm imagining Burt Reynolds is driving that car through that very narrow lane through the woods. Yes. And John Voight's reaction is possibly genuine. You know, he's shitting himself possibly. Yes. And Burt Reynolds is genuinely laughing and enjoying himself.
Yeah.
Do we get any sort of inkling or indication at this early point of what the relationship between the four people are?
I mean, I haven't read the book. Like I was saying earlier, I really would like to read the novel. I got the impression that Lewis and Ed, John Voight, are probably quite good friends and quite old friends.
Yeah.
And you get the feeling John Voight is such a good actor. I mean, I love Midnight Cowboy. I mean, that's way up on my flick chart as well. You get the impression that he admires Lewis. And maybe, again, in the book, apparently he's an ad exec, but apparently he's a bit insecure or he's a bit jaded in his job. So he's a family man.
Yeah.
You get the impression that maybe he'd like to be a bit more like Lewis. So that's their thing. I think Drew is probably someone, I get the feeling maybe John Voight, Ed, has known them all for a long time.
This was the...
Yeah, he's the sort of anchor of the four at the beginning. But if you notice, the whole kind of his journey is that he has to become the alpha male. He becomes Lewis because obviously Burt Reynolds is incapacitated. You get the feeling that maybe we use their character names so people know. Lewis and Bobby, who's Ned Beatty, they probably don't know each other that well. But the thing I was going to ask you, actually, I think in the novel you find out what Lewis's job is, but I don't know. But it says in the synopsis, for Atlanta businessmen. So you get the idea that maybe Burt Reynolds is quite a settled guy, but he's got this other adventurous side. He says that famous line about, "Oh, we don't need insurance," isn't it? Because Bobby works in insurance. So you got that tension. You got the insurance guy and the guy who doesn't believe in insurance. It's very clever, you know. So I think, yeah, Lewis and Ed are probably good friends, and I think Ed is probably friends with the three of them.
That's what's trying to work out. Did all four know each other? I knew there was probably one that was a bit of an outsider, or you know, they weren't four like high school buddies. We definitely get that impression. They haven't all known each other for a long period of time, but they know of each other, or two are very close, certainly very close.
Yeah, I could see Drew as I don't know, like a college lecturer or something, or he might bring his guitar into his class. You can imagine he's someone who likes busting the guitar out, a bit like me, really.
A bit like maybe a teacher that plays the guitar. There we go. It's you. We've got it. Yeah.
I can't think who that could be. You know?
You get the chance to sort of work out their characters within that first 15 minutes. And as you say, you get an instant inkling of what Ned Beatty is like, that brash. His mouth gets him in trouble everywhere he goes, sort of thing.
Yeah, he's making fun of the hillbillies, isn't he?
Yeah. Ronnie Cox has this wide-eyed innocence.
Yeah. He's very childlike, isn't he?
Yeah. Burt Reynolds
seems like the real nicest guy. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, and Burt Reynolds, as you say, almost certainly holding down a steady, boring 9-to-5 job, and his weekend is his release. You know, doing things like this. Are very passionate about the environment, as he says right at the beginning, and the whole thing's his idea.
Yes.
I don't think there's the idea that they're reluctant to go along with the whole thing. It's just a case of their lives dictate that they couldn't possibly, you know, because of the families and things like that. And Burt Reynolds has sort of insisted that this is the only chance they're going to get. These are the sort of things I was picking up on, you know, under the surface of the dialogue that I thought I knew so familiar with, you know, all these years. And even when you get to like the village and things like that, where they're trying to arrange getting the cars out, and you start noticing that there are families that are already packed, or houses that are empty where they've started evacuating the area, ready for the whole dam to flood the area. And you just get this impression of which I missed before, that what they're saying is going to affect all of this area. It's all going to be under 300 feet of water. And these families have got to be displaced somewhere at some point in a very short period of time, because towards the end, it's very apparent when they collect the car, the family that are there waiting with them have got all their belongings packed in the back of their truck.
Yes. Did you notice that? Oh, go on, sorry.
You're going to say about the church?
Yeah, the church being transported. I love that. Yeah, the Church of Christ.
On a trailer.
How about that for symbolism? Yeah. Oh, God.
Silly little thing. Well, not silly, but the attention to detail very subtly became apparent to me this time round. And for something, for me, that was a 10 out of 10 or a 5-star movie, and it's hard to actually improve on that score, you know.
Yes, you get 6-star. Yeah.
You can do, very rarely, yes, you can do that. Film Junk podcast actually do that. They allow their reviewers 1 or 2 6-star reviews.
Oh, do they?
So yeah.
Well, if Dubai can have 6-star hotels, then we can have.
There you go. Yeah, and you can turn your amp up to 11. So why not? We're sort of trying to bring this in chronologically, and as it's going. So we've got to mention the scene 1, dueling banjos. You being a musician. You being able to play that. You did play me a brief extract a few weeks ago. Oh, he's got it. He's going to do it now. I did not cue this up at all, ladies and gentlemen.
Just a little bit. Now, it's very difficult with one guitar to do 2 parts, but I'll try.
Machines are going to fail, and the system's going to fail. And
then what?
Then survival. Who has the ability to survive? That's the game. Survive.
And you can't wait for it to happen, can you? You can't wait for it. Well, the system's done all right by me.
Oh, yeah. You got a nice job. Got a nice house,
Nice wife. Nice kid.
You make that sound rather shitty, Lewis.
Why do you go on these trips with me, Ed?
I like my life, Lewis.
Yeah, but why do you go on these trips with me?
You know, sometimes I wonder about that. Here's to you, Lewis.
Ah, damn, he got one. Terrific, Lewis.
I hate him.
Go back to one of your earlier questions.
Yeah.
I've now remembered. I think I saw this film at the same time I was learning the guitar, which was about 14.
Oh, right, okay.
Because one of the things that drew me to it, I thought, what the hell is this musical number doing in the middle of what I said off mic? We invented a genre, canoeing horror. Why is there a musical number? But it just makes it unique, doesn't it?
Yeah. The whole thing obviously was scripted and pre-planned, and the young actor that plays the banjo couldn't play the banjo.
Yes.
You know this bit, and then it's a young kid that can play the banjo whose arm is underneath his body.
Oh, how brilliant!
Playing,
yes.
While the actor himself is just picking, basically.
Yes, you can more or less fake picking with the right hand. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, but there is an actual actor sitting behind that guy playing the banjo.
Yeah. It's another boy, actually.
Yeah. What I read somewhere, because I haven't gone into trivia and this stuff I'm sort of remembering from our previous review, where the old boy with the hat starts dancing at the gas station, that bit wasn't scripted.
That's right, yeah, it wasn't.
Is that right? It was spontaneous,
yeah.
and they just kept it in because this guy was just dancing away like a loon, and it just really worked.
And all those people were local people; they weren't actors. Obviously, one of the mountain men, we'll get to that scene later, he was in First Blood and a few other ones. Green Mile, but the other one, the one you mentioned with the dentures.
Yes.
I think Burt Reynolds worked on a ranch or something, and he said, I've worked with this guy and he might fit the bill. He wasn't an actor, but...
Well, his nickname was Cowboy, wasn't it? It was something Cowboy something, wasn't it? I think on the credits. Yeah. So Burt Reynolds has picked him basically purely on his appearance. He looks like a crazy mountain man. We'll get him in the movie.
And there's another funny bit of trivia. The boy who played the guitar, I think his name was Billy something. He was about 15, I think.
Yeah.
He, for some reason, he didn't like Ned Beatty and he liked Ronnie Cox.
Okay.
And here's an interesting bit. This is a silly bit of trivia, but the scene where he had to glare at Ronnie Cox, although I don't think they're in the same shot, he didn't want to glare at Ronnie Cox because he liked him. So they got Ned Beatty to look at him and he glared at him instead. That's just such a brilliant piece of film trivia, isn't it? You know, it's one of those silly bits.
Do you know what sort of hit me this time as well? When they get into the canoes and they're starting their paddle off down, and that kid is up on the bridge with the banjo looking down, and I just looked and I thought, do you know what he looks like? And I'm not being cruel here. He looked as if he'd been drawn by Charles Schulz out of a Peanuts cartoon.
Yeah.
Didn't he? If you could imagine Charles Schulz drawing a hillbilly character, that's what he would draw because of the big ears and the oval face, and it just looked like a sort of stretched out Charlie Brown type thing. You know?
It's strange, isn't it? I mean, you get the idea. Did you get the idea that he must be some sort of savant? Because obviously the way he's playing the banjo is just supernaturally good, you know?
Yeah.
You get the idea, maybe, I don't know, maybe he's autistic or whatever he is, or feral or whatever he is, but you immediately start thinking he must be some sort of savant, because to play that well, because the kid doesn't even look 15, he looks more like 12, doesn't he? Really?
Yeah, years of inbreeding has made him some sort of banjo master. You know?
That's it, yeah. Yes. But yeah, there's a great shot. The camera sort of goes round him, and then he's swinging that banjo and just staring.
Yeah.
Because Ronnie Cox mimes a guitar with the oar, doesn't he?
With the oar, and he's waving at him and
smiling.
Yeah. And the kid's having none of it, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was having none of it as soon as the song finished. Remember, he goes, "Do you want to play another one?"
Yeah.
And he sort of shook his head. And
that was it. Yeah.
Very sinister, isn't it?
That's the thing. There's this air of menace right from the beginning. And if you hadn't seen the movie before and you don't know what the outcome's going to be, you get a pretty good inkling that something's going to be happening at some point.
Yeah.
This isn't going to be, 4 guys going on a great camping trip.
Yeah, but isn't it so strange that there's about 15 minutes of basically canoeing documentary, or it's like a home movie of the guys on the weekend. It's so strange, isn't it?
But I love that bit as well.
So
because,
do I.
You know, as it's sort of pretty well documented, they did all the canoeing and all the stunts because, talking of insurance, they weren't insured again, were they? This was the whole reason, wasn't it?
Isn't it incredible? I mean, that would just never happen. Shall we just explain for listeners who don't know this? Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. It's a book by Peter Biskind, and it describes the period of New Hollywood. But you and I have kind of agreed it's somewhere from actually The Graduate or Bonnie and Clyde in 67.
Bonnie and Clyde, I think, pretty much, yeah. The end of the studio system, yeah.
So Raging Bull, or basically Heaven's Gate, because that was the one that bankrupted whichever, nearly bankrupted.
Yeah, United Artists, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah. So there's this period of intense sort of realism. And there's a link, really, because I'm sure I know we haven't reviewed French Connection, but we've talked about it. There's bits of French Connection that just look at like a documentary of stakeout cops, you know, drinking coffee and waiting for something to happen. And this one, what I love about it, like you said, the only soundtrack to this film is various versions of dueling banjos, because if you notice, they play different versions of it.
Yeah.
Slow versions of it, and they just let it happen. So there's a couple of reasons why this film wouldn't happen now. I mean, there's obviously perhaps that scene, perhaps the insurance thing, but also the thing of like, oh, it's just 10 minutes of a load of blokes canoeing. Like nowadays, you know, the way our sort of all our attention spans have been shortened, it'd be like, oh, come on, get on with it, you know. But I love, you know, I love the documentary idea of it, and it's just so weird. You've got a musical number, you've got a canoeing documentary, and then you've got this absolute horror story. You know, it's amazing.
Yeah, every single genre crammed into like an hour and a half, pretty much.
It's absolutely unique, isn't it?
We get a little bit of an insight into the characters before the horrific scene. John Voight is drinking in the canoe. Burt Reynolds is catching fish with a bow and arrow. For God's sake.
With his sleeveless, should mention his sleeveless wetsuit as well.
Yeah.
Is it a wetsuit? Something like that. Looks
just looking like Burt Reynolds, pretty much.
But looking the part, he is amazing.
I mean, Burt Reynolds was born to play the bandit, or you know, those Cannonball Run type movies. You know, that's where he found his audience a couple of years after this. But at the same time, he was a great action character actor. A bit of a heartthrob for the ladies and all of that sort of stuff. And it's perfectly suited this role to him, you know, just standing there with like the sleeveless wetsuit and the bow and arrow, you know, just doing all the macho bit. And it's amazing. It's a really, and it gives you some insight, as I say, that John Voight is slowly getting pissed on these cans of lager while Bert's catching their tea with a bow and arrow. And it's the old
catching their tea. You're right, isn't it? That's our dinner. You can imagine they brought a load of you know, ready meals from the city.
But Bert's gone wild man of the woods. You know, he's doing it all properly, and it's also a classic example of Chekhov's gun.
Yes.
You remember, like Chekhov said, if you're going to show a gun on the wall in chapter 1, you've got to make sure you use it by the end of the book.
Yes,
sort of thing.
yes.
So there's your bow and arrow. That's going to get used at some point. It gets used quite a few times, actually.
Well, you also got John Voight failing to shoot the deer.
That's the bit I was hinting at earlier when you said about John Voight. John Voight goes out hunting. What they were going to do with a whole deer, I don't know. They're only going out for like a day and a half or whatever it is. And the fact that he can't bring himself to kill an animal completely goes on its head in the next hour or so. You know, he has to call whatever reserves he's got to the forefront to make sure he can actually have that bloodlust in him, you know.
Yeah.
You get again, but the character interaction in that particular scene, mate, where you got a lull in the proceedings, you've had your canoeing documentary, you know you've got the nasty bit coming up in a minute, but it's just the four of them, and it's just dialogue about, I can't really remember. I mean, John Voight must have been saying something that he wouldn't normally say because he's been a bit loosened by the alcohol. I can't exactly remember. Was it the family stuff I think he might have dwelt on there?
Yeah, there's another really good line. He says, I like my life, Lewis. You know, the system's done all right by me. But the thing I like about them, John Voight is so, I mean, I don't know what he's like in real life, but he's so likable. His character, you just can't help liking him because he's a kind of a gentle guy, you know, discovers his alpha male later on. But no, it's the bit where Lewis says, you got a nice wife, nice life, and he goes, you make that sound pretty shitty, Lewis.
Yes.
But he laughs, you know, there's a warmth between them. You know, they know they're opposites, or maybe they're not so opposite. Maybe you're right. Reynolds is a weekend warrior, but
yeah, Burt Reynolds is probably the bachelor out of them all, you know. And
yeah, probably, yeah.
He's the one that pulls a different bird in the bar every weekend or whatever, you know. And in a way, he's jealous of Voight's life. Perhaps deep down, that's what he wants. He wants a family. He wants to settle down a little bit.
But then it's mutual, because Voight probably wants to be a bit more of an adventurer. In a way, maybe he's fulfilling his fantasy the way it goes.
Yeah.
Not because he wants to, but because he's forced to, you know. It's really interesting. You mentioned earlier, like, a really on-the-nose line. There's another one. They get through the rapids. And, of course, all the 4 actors are absolutely shitting themselves, because it's all done. There's one shot of a double. And
Is that the one where it flips over?
I think so, yeah.
I think there's a bit where he flies out of the canoe and does a complete somersault, I think
so.
That might be the bit where Burt Reynolds actually cracked his coccyx, I think.
Yeah, so there's a funny line with Borman, because I think they all got on very well, because obviously when you're going through an experience, the 4 actors, like the 4 characters, you're going to bond, aren't you? Because you're going through this crazy experience.
Yeah.
There's a funny one where they used a double, and Burt Reynolds said, to John Borman, can I do it myself? And after they finished the shot, Burt Reynolds said, how did it look? And John Borman said, it looked like a double going through the rapids. Great line. But there's a really on-the-nose line. When they get through the rapids, Bobby, Beatty goes, we beat it, didn't we? And Lewis says, you don't beat this river.
You don't beat it. Again, some of the lines, they sound great, but they're a little bit out of place in the, you know, if you're trying to hit the realism of the scene, you know.
Yeah, a bit on the nose, aren't they?
But you can tell that they're struggling with the canoes, because at one point the canoe's going backwards after they've come through a particular part, and they're trying to like right themselves and come round.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming a lot of that dialogue was ad-libbed throughout all of that, and they kept in character all the way through it.
Yeah, there was a story about James Dickey, who was an incredible character. I mean, a lunatic, but a force of nature and a poet laureate. He did a thing that a lot of writers sometimes do. They go on set and they say, well, you know, why are you changing my dialogue? And they're like, well, we're basing it on your book, you know. And there was a bit where James Dickey said, you know, we need a bit more backstory. Can't we see these guys in the city? And John Borman said, no, you don't need to, you know, because the way they're dressed and a few of the lines, a skillful, you know, I mean, Dickey was a writer, but maybe they changed a bit, you know, you never know. But the skill is to convey a lot of information without showing you it, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the sign of a good screenwriter, isn't it?
Yeah.
And at one point, if I remember, I'm going back again to our original review, Dickey got so upset with Borman, he broke his nose. Is that right? But then they became really close friends, and then that's how he got to be in the scene as the police officer at the end.
I mean, it's a bit weird, because in the commentary and all the document, I watched a sort of 1 hour thing, they never mentioned that, but they did mention that they chucked him out. They chucked him off the set.
Right.
I got anything else? Yeah, apparently nose broken, 4 of his teeth shattered.
Bloody hell.
They became good friends, and Dickey was very complimentary to the actors. He also, how about this? He was telling everyone separately.
Yeah.
All this happened to me. He told everyone separately, and then they discovered it was all bullshit. Like he was a storyteller in every sense of the word. He'd make up stories.
Because there was this thing that was loosely based on something, wasn't it? But nobody seems to know what the source material actually is.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Probably some of it happened to him. I don't know. But...
Yeah. Before we get to, like, you know, the main part of the whole movie, and we're talking about the 4 actors, you were teasing me earlier with some alternate castings. I've got to know now. I've got to. Who was up for whatever role then, mate? What have you got there?
All right, get ready for this. Well, one of them's actually a director. Dickey apparently wanted Sam Peckinpah to direct it, which I could see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would have been good. It would have been good. Yeah. Dickey wanted Gene Hackman to play Ed. I could kind of see that, because Gene Hackman could do that sort of genial.
Same year as Poseidon Adventure as well, pretty much, 72.
Absolutely. I've got Borman wanted Lee Marvin to play Ed, but I could see Lee Marvin as Lewis, I think, more, wouldn't you say? Maybe.
Lee Marvin.
Bit more rugged.
Yeah. Back then, Lee Marvin, Point Break was 67.
Point Blank, yeah.
sorry, Point Blank. Point Break, that's the Sky
Point
one,
Break's
isn't it?
the surfing
Yeah.
heist movie, talking about mixing genres. Yeah.
But that was Borman, wasn't it? Point Blank.
Point Blank was Borman, yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably why he was his first choice then. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I could see them interchanging either of those roles, I think. Yeah.
But you ready for some other ones? Here we go.
Yeah.
Borman wanted Brando for Lewis Medlock and Nicholson for Ed. And I think Brando and Nicholson, I don't know if they were already friends because they became neighbours years later. And they did, obviously, Missouri Breaks.
Yeah.
But they were too expensive because the other thing was that they were trying to cut costs. That's why they were doing their own stunts and they weren't insured.
Yeah.
Can you believe it? But then we got some very bizarre ones. Donald Sutherland and Charlton Heston as Lewis. Try and get your head around that.
Donald Sutherland as Drew, I could have seen.
Yes. Yeah, kind of bookish.
Yeah.
Not so much of an action man. Charlton Heston, I don't know what he would have been doing in this film.
Charlton Heston
is the sheriff.
Charlton Heston was born old. You know, Charlton Heston.
Yeah, he was a middle-aged baby. Yeah.
Yeah, he always, you know, even in the early movies, you know, Spartacus or Ben-Hur and all that lot. He always looked like a 50-year-old man.
He did, yes.
Always. So, I don't know. Again, Heston was up for bloody Jaws, wasn't he, at one point?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, originally. But yeah, okay.
I've got other ones. I don't know which roles, but some of these are a bit bizarre. Robert Redford, yes, I could see. I suppose that'd be Ed, would it?
Yeah.
John Boyd.
Anything around this era, Paul Newman and Robert Redford would have been considered.
Of course, yeah. Henry Fonda. I can't imagine who would Henry Fonda have played.
No, Henry Fonda as the Mountain Man.
Henry Fonda as the sheriff.
He would have had. He'd have been a perfect sheriff. He would have been a perfect sheriff.
Yeah, he would have been. But I think James Dickey was brilliant as that
sheriff.
Yeah. The way he looks at him, because I think that's what James Dickey was actually like, an incredibly penetrating stare. You know, he could just stare straight through you. Yeah. George C. Scott, who would he have played? I suppose that'd be Lewis.
Yeah, again, that's just it just seems too old for the role.
Yeah, it does.
But I always picture George C. Scott as an older man most of the time. But
yeah, and Warren Beatty.
Ed.
That'd be Ed, wouldn't it? Obviously, yeah. But here's another one. You've just kindly put out the Jaws commentary we did.
I did, yes, yeah.
Do you not think between the four characters there's a little bit of Brody Quint Hooper dynamics with Lewis as Quint?
Yep.
You know, sort of.
Glad you said that. There is.
Yeah, were you thinking that?
There was something about the whole situation of a group of men in not necessarily a confined space, but in a dangerous environment that there's only one route out, basically.
Yes.
Which is what Jaws is. You know, they've only got one means of escape, which is to head for the shore.
Yes.
In this, they've only got one means of escape, which is to head downstream to the river, you know.
Yeah.
But there's a big obstacle in the way, and it's not a great white shark. It's a man on top of a cliff with a gun.
Yes.
So you've got to eliminate that before you can get home. It's very similar. I know it's not in the confines of the orca. It's, you know, and then you're also getting sort of like injuries along the way and people being incapacitated, which sort of happens a little bit.
Yes.
With the loss of Hooper, you know, the one man down. Oh, there's some good comparisons.
There are, aren't there? I mean, Lewis is very clearly Quint, isn't it? Because it's the nature, you know, the guy he's a bit old school.
Yeah.
And Brody, I suppose, would be John Voight because he's a bit of an everyman and he's no one particularly dislikes him. Because you've got the antagonism. I suppose Hooper would have to be Ned Beatty, but I'm not sure if that works. But you need that antagonism between, I don't know, like you
need a bit of friction, don't you?
A city boy and a nature guy, you know. It's one of them.
Yeah,
so,
bit of
I mean,
friction.
I thought of you because I thought of that and I suddenly thought, I think Scott will appreciate that.
It just amazes me, you going back to that casting, that Charlton Heston, even in 72, I mean, I know Planet of the Apes was only 3-4 years prior to this, but as I say, he was still a leading man. 72 might have been Soylent Green as well, that he did with Edward G. Robinson, or 71, round about that sort of time.
That was 73, because I actually appeared on a podcast reviewing that last year, yeah.
There you go.
Good film.
And it just amazes me that what you look back now at an old 50s actor, but then again, I suppose we could say that nowadays about Harrison Ford up to about 20 years ago. I mean, he's 70 plus now, Harrison Ford, but even in his 50s, he was still pulling in those action roles, wasn't he, Harrison Ford? It's intriguing, and it's also not surprising that Beatty, Redford, all those guys were in the run. They were always top choice for any movie round about this sort of time. Nicholson,
Yeah,
surprising. I mean,
not sure.
He wasn't massive then, was he? So he might have been a bit cheaper, I suppose, Jack Nicholson.
I could see Nicholson as Drew because he can play the more intellectual, bookish.
Yeah.
When he gets his glasses on.
Yeah.
If you see Nicholson in glasses, there's a couple of roles he's played where he's more understated. He's not the Jack from The Shining and Cuckoo's Nest, because he was a bit more, even Easy Rider, he's more understated, isn't he?
Yes, absolutely.
He's not sort of a leering, flamboyant character. So it's always interesting, isn't it? Alternative casting, but I can't see beyond these four guys who are just perfect.
Again, it's going back to Jaws. We've always said it was pure fate that the three of them were cast together in Jaws. And there's no way I could see Lee Marvin playing Coon, or even Sterling Hayden, who would have been brilliant.
Sterling Hayden at a push, I think.
Yeah, but the trio we get in Jaws, absolutely. And the four we get here, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It worked. Absolutely worked.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to now play part of that scene.
That scene or that scene? The second one, you mean? Yeah. Okay.
No. Hey, boy. No. You look just like a hog. No, don't. You look just like a hog. Come here, Biggie. No. Come here, Biggie. Biggie. Come on. Oh, Biggie. Oh, Biggie. Oh, Biggie, give me a ride. On a ride. Hey, boy, get up and give me a ride. All right. Get up and give me a ride, boy. All right. All right. Get up. All right. Get up there. Okay. No. Come on. No. Come on. Come on. No. Look like we got us a sow here instead of a boy. Don't. Yeah, boy. I bet you can squeal. I bet you can squeal like a pig. Oh, we'll squeal. Squeal now. Squeal. Squeal. Squeal louder. 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 Get down there, boy. Hey, them britches down. Yes, sir. You get better than that, boy. You get better than that. Come on, squeal. Squeal.
Okay, probably the most infamous or famous scene in the entire movie. And you can guarantee that when you mention this movie to anybody, like I have this week saying we were going to review it, first thing they're going to say is, they're going to misquote it. It's going to be like a Play It Again Sam moment. And as we sort of mentioned in the run-up to this, it's quite disheartening that that's only what people remember about this movie is that and dueling banjos, because already in this first 45 minutes we've discovered other little gems along the way, equally if not more interesting and more exciting, but we're talking 1972, we're talking quite shocking. Even watching it, I was squirming a bit watching it this time round as well. The distress on Ned Beatty's face, that he's actually knackered. He is physically worn out. You could see.
Just going to say that was it, wasn't it? Yeah.
And that wasn't acting. He was genuinely tired out by the whole proceedings. We won't go into too much detail. It's such a famous scene, but the bit that I loved was sort of post the actual rape scene itself. The bit I've always loved about this movie is when John Voight is tied to the tree with his own belt, still holding on to his pipe throughout the whole thing, by the way. He hasn't dropped the pipe. It's the look he gives Burt Reynolds.
Yes.
Just as the toothless guy is about to go for him. And it's that desperation, sort of like nodding his head and opening his eyes wide. And I'm thinking, previously I thought, that was always a bit too exaggerated. Why haven't they spotted he's pulling this face to somebody behind them? but it did actually look genuine, you know. And you get this whole thing where William McKinley gets shot by Burt Reynolds and the arrow.
Incredible.
One of the greatest death scenes in cinema history. It's so prolonged.
It's amazing.
People don't die instantly, do they? That's the thing. You know, that death would have taken that long.
Yeah.
And I remember on our original review where William McKinley is leaning up against this tree, this branch of this tree, with his face all skew-whiffed by a branch.
Yeah.
And he was there apparently for hours, wasn't he, holding this particular position. But around all of this going on, Ned Beatty getting dressed and getting angry and all of this sort of stuff, there is probably the best sequence of dialogue within the movie, I think, as they argue and reason amongst themselves as to what is the best way out of this situation. And then it all comes down to a vote.
Yes.
You know, the whole thing about democracy and...
Yeah, very, very interesting. So there's one bit where Burt Reynolds plays on the fact that Drew is clearly a liberal who believes in the system.
Yeah.
He plays on it, doesn't he? And so, well, you believe in democracy, let's have a vote, you know?
But he knows that the other three will be on his... Well, he knows Ned Beatty would definitely be on his side. And I think he sort of knows that John Voight, being his oldest friend...
Yes.
And a family man and all of that sort of stuff, it's like, he's got to be on my side with this as well. You know, Burt Reynolds would not have put that to the vote if he'd have known he was going to lose.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure looking at it this time round.
Yeah. Oh, got so much to say. I mean, the Screw Like a Pig scene. And what I was going to say was that apparently, this is interesting, Ned Beatty and William McKinney, they actually spent quite a lot of time together, which might sound a bit weird, but I don't mean
we're talking like candlelit dinners for two or something.
God, I walked into that one.
No, being wooed, you know, what was he trying to do?
No, I'm trying to imagine Ned Beatty in his first film, thinking, you know, blimey, is this what filmmaking's like? You know, what a trooper. I mean, you know, he was amazing. All the others, they commended him because the poor guy, you know, for the rest of his life, you know, everywhere he walks down the street, people are shouting at him.
You're like a pig.
He said that, of course. Yeah. And William McKinney, we've got to salute the guy. Apparently, he held his breath for about 2 minutes or something, which is not an easy thing to do. And he's got his eyes rolling back in his head.
Yeah.
Not only that, he gets buried.
Yes,
they buried him.
Actually buried alive. Yeah.
He was buried alive for a few minutes or however long it was. You know, I mean, this is why we love this period, don't we?
Didn't even get mentioned in the Oscars, did he? That year.
That's what I mean. You know, in a just world, I'd have nominated him at least. But yeah, very interesting. Have you ever seen a film called Very Bad Things with Christian Slater and Cameron Diaz?
When it very first came out, I've got no recollection of it. I'm pretty sure I watched it.
Yeah, it's not a brilliant film, but I remember I had a flat share in London, and you know, sometimes you kind of get obsessed with one particular film, and me and another guy who lived there, we used to watch that all the time. Yeah. And they do almost the same thing. They accidentally kill someone in a bathroom, and they have to have a vote about it. And I thought they're definitely channeling Deliverance. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that is the dialogue scene, isn't it, more than the other ones?
It's a break from what we've witnessed, as you said. You know, we've got the initial opening scene of the driving and the getting to know the guys. You've got your canoeing documentary. You've got a bit of like reflection and retrospection when Voight is drunk and talking to Burt Reynolds as he's catching the fish, and you get a little insight into the characters there. Just prior to this scene is the scene where Voight tries to kill the deer and cannot do it, and it just all leads up to this 2-3 minute of dialogue, as I say, of like reasoning, arguing, backstabbing, fighting amongst each other, and then just generally agreeing and reasoning and thinking we've got to get together to make this work. There's only one way out of this. And Burt Reynolds makes the argument that all this is going to be under 300 foot of water.
Yes.
If we go to court, we're going to be sitting in front of a jury that's going to be his cousin and his father or his mother or whatever. You know, he makes the perfect argument as to why they should do what they then do.
Yes.
And yes, quite rightly, it does get spoken about as the scene in the film, but there is more to this movie, as we say.
Yeah, definitely.
But that whole 10 minutes from John Voight initially walking onto the shore to then burying the body and getting back in the boat is a fantastic 10 minutes of cinema, mate.
And interesting, do you notice they do the camping scene Just go back very slightly. There's a cabin scene overnight, and Burt Reynolds thinks he hears something. So you get the idea that they're being watched somehow.
At that point, yeah.
We just quickly mention the camera work. The camera work was designed with these long shots to make them look very small. It's that idea of how small man is against the elements.
Nature.
They also washed out all the colours because they didn't want anything to look bright, so it looks quite bleak. There's lots of greens and browns.
There was something about
kept going on about that, didn't he?
The river looked too beautiful, apparently, so they wanted to make it look a bit more menacing and a bit more challenging than the beautiful bit of scenery that it actually was. Yeah.
And John Voight also, interestingly, he gets up early, or he wakes up. And that thing with the deer, it's almost like it's in secret, isn't it? Because I think the others are all asleep, aren't they? They don't.
I think they're all still in bed. I think. Yeah.
So it's almost, you almost, again, I'm kind of overanalyzing, but why not? It's almost like he wants to sort of play out his little fantasy in secret.
Yeah.
But then you feel like he hasn't really got the heart to kill the deer. But then obviously when it's the mountain man, because he's done that to his friend, in his mind he's sort of justified. That guy's worse than an animal in a sense. You know?
I think what it all boils down to is the reason why Voight went on the trip in the first place, because by the sound of it, him and Burt Reynolds have been friends for a long, long time.
Yes.
John Voight has settled down, married, kids, whatever. Well, he's got a kid and one on the way, hasn't he? As we find out later. But Burt Reynolds is still living this free and easy life and pulling birds left, right. So I think he's gone on this trip as it's a bit of curiosity. What if? What if there's a chance that I can actually live Burt Reynolds' life, even if only for a weekend, and just see what my mate has actually been doing for the last 15 years while I've been married?
You can imagine Burt Reynolds going around their house and being a really good sort of uncle to their kids, playing like American football or what they call
absolutely.
They call football and we call American football. You can imagine that, he'd be a really cool uncle. He's probably like good with the kids and stuff.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. We can sort of fill in the gaps. We don't really need to see them in their former life.
No,
because you get enough dialogue.
Yeah,
Dickie was wrong, I think. Yeah, but
I think you get enough clues. I think throughout. Yeah, but nothing highlights it all more than the argument between them and the reasoning between them in that particular sequence.
Yeah,
you see their four characters. And Ronnie Cox is still determined, even at the end of it, that they did the wrong thing, but he's had to go with the majority,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because he believes in it, doesn't he? Democracy. Yeah. Should we do the interlude bit?
1972. Were you alive in 1972, my friend?
No, I wasn't. No, unfortunately. Were you? Yes, you were.
Yes, I bloody was.
Yeah. Yes, I didn't know that because you were on the 1969.
I was. Plug. Yes. I was there for the moon landing, mate. I told you that, didn't I?
You were. Yeah.
What was happening in 1972? Give us the news headlines.
I haven't got the news headlines, but I did want to just brush through some of the films.
It's a great year when you look at it, isn't it?
I mean, all these years are just fantastic. I mean, we're a bit biased, maybe, but. All right, so we've got probably the biggies. I mean, I've never seen Cabaret in my life. You probably have, I guess.
I have, yes, yeah.
Never seen it.
Not my favourite musical. It's a bit bizarre as a musical, as they class it, but
I probably should watch it.
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of Michael York, which is probably why I don't watch it as often as I have other movies of that sort of genre. But Minnelli's great in it, and Joel Grey is bloody amazing in it, absolutely. Yeah, and he won. Didn't Joel Grey win Best Supporting Actor?
Quite possibly.
Definitely nominated. I know that.
Because I don't think any of the Godfather, Brando obviously won, but I don't think Pacino and Khan. I think they were nominated but didn't win.
Yeah, I think Joel Grey might have, mate. I'm not
possibly.
100%. Yeah.
And then we got obviously we got Godfather, Sleuth. We just did the Michael Caine show, didn't we?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I was thinking, what would Michael Caine have said after The Squeal Like a Pig? Something like he was only 35 years old. He would have been very sympathetic, wouldn't he? Yes.
He's a big man, but he squeals like a pig.
Yeah. That was our last collaboration, folks. Just in case you're wondering. Yeah.
We did a Michael Caine special.
Michael Caine in Deliverance. Oh, my God. Talk about alternative casting.
Don't even go there.
All right. Frenzy, which we reviewed recently. Hitchcock.
Was that 72 as well?
Very good latter-day Hitchcock, yes.
Wow.
Last Tango in Paris.
Brando's busy year, yes.
Yeah, just to say quickly, I mean, if you watch The Godfather and Last Tango in Paris back to back, I mean, how could that be the same person?
Oh my
God! It's a bit like watch French Connection in The Conversation. And marvel at Gene Hackman, how he can be both those people. You know?
That's a good shout, actually.
Amazing.
Conversation's one of my favourites. Yeah.
Oh, me too, yeah. Poseidon Adventure, talking of Hackman.
We mentioned, didn't we? Yeah, Gene Hackman.
Yeah. Aguirre, Wrath of God. Have you ever seen that? It's Werner Herzog.
The Herzog. No, I've seen Fitzcarraldo. I think it's probably one of the only ones I've seen.
It's a goodie, very atmospheric. It's I wouldn't say it's similar to Deliverance, but it is a load of people on a river who just get stuck.
It's the Amazon, isn't it? And
in fact, it's very. I just think about it, it's very similar because they get set upon by the locals.
Oh, there you go.
Not that different, in fact.
Is it like the Spanish conquistadors or something, isn't it? In the Amazon or something? Am I picturing that right?
Yeah.
With Klaus Kinski and...
Yes, Klaus Kinski, yeah, the mad Klaus Kinski.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Play It Again, Sam's a Woody Allen. Solaris is Tarkovsky is a kind of a Russian 2001.
Yeah.
Young Winston with Robert Shaw.
That's a great movie.
Ready for your trivia question, Scott? What Woody Allen film was Burt Reynolds in this year?
It's the one where he plays the sperm.
No, he doesn't. Woody Allen plays the sperm. Yes.
No. So does Burt Reynolds.
No, he doesn't. He's one of the controllers.
He's the controller in the brain. It's everything you ever wanted to know about sex, but afraid to
Very
ask.
good. Yes. That's brilliant. I mean, that's a very uneven film, but it's basically you see the inner mechanisms. It's a couple on a date. You see the food being digested. And Burt Reynolds' famous line is, "We need an erection at 45 degrees. All systems go," or something like that. Proceed with erection. All systems go.
The favourite or my favourite bit of that entire movie. I mean, there's the great bit in with the chastity belt and Lynn Redgrave, but it's the whole Gene Hackman as the psychiatrist with the sheep.
Oh, Gene Wilder.
Sorry, I said Gene Hackman. Yes, sorry, he was in everything. Gene Wilder and the sheep.
Oh god, yeah. Takes it out to dinner and puts a necklace around it and stuff.
Stockings and suspenders on it and everything.
Oh god.
Best supporting actor was Joel Grey. Definitely was Joel Grey. I've just checked. And oh no, he won the Golden Globe. Joel Grey, yes, he won it for Cabaret in the Academy Awards. Brando won Best Actor. Best Supporting Actress this year, Eileen Heckart for Butterflies Are Free.
Oh, never heard of that one.
No. Shelley Winters got the Golden Globe for Poseidon Adventure. Cloris Leachman got the BAFTA for Last Picture Show.
Shelley Winters won, yeah, because
yeah. Do you remember
the bit of that I always remember from when I was a kid was when she has to dive down, doesn't she? And she says, "I got a swimming certificate or something," and she dives down and
towards the end because obviously everything's upside down, isn't it?
That's a childhood thing, isn't it? We got King of Marvin Gardens, which is an early Jack Nicholson, sort of his real hot period. But of course, Scott, everything pales into significance when I tell you that this was the year of. Listen to this: Carry On Abroad and Carry On Matron.
Now,
I mean, talk about spoiled, eh?
It's possibly the only year that you get two Carry On movies. I'm sorry.
That was my question for you. Yeah.
I think it is possibly the only time it happens. It's since '58 when they first started, and it's a shame because it's getting just past the golden era. It's a shame that I actually know that there's a golden era of Carry On movies that baffles most people.
Yeah. I think Cleo's the best, or Carry On Screaming's pretty
Cleo
good.
was always my favourite. And it sort of starts at Cleo, the golden period, and finishes at Camping in '69. But I'm open to arguments with this, because it's only Carry On movies at the end of the day.
Yeah, Carry On Deliverance. There you go. That'll boggle your mind.
Sid James, Charles Hawtrey, Kenneth Williams. Yeah.
That's my Sid James.
Oh, behave. Right.
Yes.
It was also the year of Deep Throat, 1972. Lady Sings the Blues, Diana Ross. Sam Peckinpah, we mentioned earlier. The Getaway, Steve McQueen, Ali McGraw was 72. Have you not seen that? That is a perfect Easy Rider Raging Bull movie as well, mate.
Right.
Have a little look at that. That is a really good film. There's a great Western, again, Robert Redford, Jeremiah Johnson.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's not on my list. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, Sidney Pollack. Apart from that, What's Up, Doc? Barbara Streisand and Ryan O'Neal. That's a great movie.
Yes.
Bogdanovich, isn't it, that one?
Mm-hmm.
72 is a great year when you look at it. The awards were pretty sort of scattered as well. Best Actor, right, as you've said, Brando won for the Academy Award for The Godfather. Okay. He also won, now back then the Golden Globes were split. He won the Golden Globe in the drama section, Marlon Brando. Jack Lemmon won it in musical or comedy for Avanti, which I haven't seen in a long time.
Hmm.
The BAFTA went to Gene Hackman for the Poseidon Adventure.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a real sort of difference of opinion as the best actor right across the board there. Whereas if you look at Best Actress, Liza Minnelli won the Golden Globe for the musical, the BAFTA, and the Academy Award. But Liv Ullmann won it for The Immigrants for the Golden Globe for drama. You know,
Don't know that one.
Mm.
Interesting, yeah.
It's a great year, you know. But then,
I mean, these were, 75, 76. I mean, have a look at those. Or not now, but if we ever do a film of those years, hint, hint, we might do one from 74.
Yeah, I think we might.
Yeah, never know. No, I mean, those years are just crazy. 76, 77, 78.
Yeah, and it just perfectly encapsulates that whole Easy Rider, Raging Bull period that we love. We do actually, the golden age of Hollywood was sort of like the 40s and the 50s, as most people generally acknowledge. But this is a second golden age, for me.
And for you. They call it New Hollywood, don't they? Hollywood New Wave.
It was the studio system had broke down. The Hays Code had gone in the early 60s. As a perfect example, I think it was the year that Bonnie and Clyde were released, which was 67, I think it was.
Yes.
And when you look at Bonnie and Clyde being produced and directed by New Hollywood, out of the studio system, Fox are desperately trying to keep things alive, and their biggest movie of the year is Dr. Dolittle with Rex Harrison. And it's not the greatest musical of all time or greatest kids movie, but they pushed everything. It was almost another Cleopatra. And that whole studio system, they refused to let, the studio system die. But I think it was things like Bonnie and Clyde that year. And then, like you said, later on, coming on to things like Clute and The Conversation and all those stuff that we love.
Yeah.
It just knocked the nail, in the coffin, and that's what makes it so exciting. But it's only a very brief window as well. Like we always say, the Beatles are only sort of 7 years of recording and all that. By 1980, as you mentioned, Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, Heaven's Gate was
pretty much it killed the studio. It killed Universal United Artists.
Yeah, I mean, I always say that Hollywood New Wave happened really for a few reasons, but the main ones being that you had all these what they call them film brats who'd been to film school, and they're all Scorsese, and they're all watching German expressionism, Russian expressionism, and everyone's doing lots of cocaine. Those are the two main reasons. And you get these producers who are sort of into the party thing, because I guess the swinging 60s was somewhere, we talked about this, between 65 and about 75. It wasn't really it wasn't really chronologically necessarily. So you get this amazing just a few more notes. John Boorman, we mentioned Point Blank. He also directed Zardoz, which I know is a film you've got a lot of affection for. It's a very strange film, yes.
Sean Connery in a nappy, basically.
John Voight had done Midnight Cowboys, we know. Coming Home.
Coming Home is a great movie. 78, I think, and it's John Voight again and Jane Fonda. I think John Voight won the Oscar for that.
Yes, he did, yeah. Rainmaker, that's a good one. That's a courtroom thing.
Would you say John Boorman was a movie brat? Because he's right sort of on the overlap, because the Point Blank being 67 or whatever, right at the end of that, and then he was obviously part of the studio system when he started, and then he sort of found himself in this new era, and he's taken to it like a duck to water,
I would say so, but I would have expected more of these sort of films to come from him, but all I've got here is Point Blank, Zardoz, and I mean Open Glory's years later, but I'd put him in that bracket if he'd made 2 or 3 other ones that, the kind of films we'd be reviewing. But
what did he make after this? Immediately after, let's have a look.
Well, Zardoz was 2 years after this.
74, wasn't it, Zard?
I was having a look through. Have a look through, but I didn't recognise too many.
Hope and Glory is a great movie, by the way. We reviewed that on Real Britannia. No, it's quite sort of few and far between. Deliverance 72. He then directed one episode of a TV thing called 10 Years On. So Zardoz is his... hang on, that's producer. Let me look at director. He's got 31 directing credits. Okay.
I mean, you'd have thought after this film, everyone would have wanted him.
I think this may have got lost a little bit under the shadow of The Godfather, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right, Deliverance 72, Zardoz 74, Exorcist 2 77.
Oh,
Then
haven't seen that.
the excellent Excalibur in 81.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, Emerald Forest, I think with Charlie Borman's actually in that again. I think he's in most of his films actually. In 85, Hope and Glory 87, Where the Heart Is 1990, and then there's just some really bizarre. The Tailor of Panama 2001.
Is that Pierce Brosnan?
That's the Pierce Brosnan one, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, but the only ones then in the Easy Riders Raging Bulls after this is Zardoz and Exorcist 2, so he's not.
He doesn't count, does he? You know,
No.
before that, in the studio system itself, as a director, it's TV stuff. He was a TV producer.
Strange.
You know, that's what he did. So
Weird.
it's a very patchy career with some very high highs and some very low lows. It's the only way I can describe it. You know, you have to pick the cherries off this cake. It would be Deliverance, Excalibur, Hope and Glory would be the three. I would
Definitely,
say.
yeah. What else have I got here? John Voight's obviously Midnight. Oh, we talked about that. Burt Reynolds was in a film called Shark in '69.
I was hoping you were going to mention this. you told me something about this on the phone the other day. Please enlighten me.
I mean, all it was is that when I watched Jaws, I you know, as a kid, and just completely kind of killed it, frankly, over watching it. But I was then desperate to watch anything. I mean, I ended up watching stuff like Piranha and Alligator, which were obviously cash-ins. But then I found a weird, I think it was a joint Mexican production. I think Burt Reynolds
already, I'm loving it. Go on, joint Mexican production. Yeah.
I honestly can't remember much about it. I don't know if he's a bounty hunter or something like that. He's a shark hunter, but it's pre-Jaws. But I watched it obviously after Jaws, so it's '69. But it's Sam Fuller. I mean, he's pretty well known. So
I've just found it. Arthur Kennedy, king of the disaster movies, is in it, and there's a lot of Mexican actors who I obviously do not know at all. Oh no, Arthur Kennedy. I'm thinking of George Kennedy. Arthur Kennedy was in Lawrence of Arabia.
Right.
There are no famous people in this movie. Shark, 1969. A gun runner loses his cargo near a small coastal Sudanese town, so he's stuck there. When a woman hires him to raid a sunken ship in the shark-infested waters, he sees a chance to compensate for his losses, and he's not the only one. Tagline. I don't know how this got a tagline because it says more bite than Jaws, and it was filmed 6 years before.
Ah, yes, I think that might have been after the fact.
And instantly, there's one bit of trivia. Stuntman Jose Marco was killed on camera when a great white shark bit through a protective net and attacked him.
Jesus.
Sam Fuller clashed with the producers on a variety of issues, and when the production company used Marco's death to promote the film, he quit. When Fuller saw the version that was released to theatres, he said it had been butchered so badly it was no longer recognisable as his film, and demanded his name be removed. But the producers refused.
Interesting.
Oh my God! So is it really a shark movie? It just happens to be set in shark-infested waters. You can't really remember too much, you say?
Not really, but I mean, you have to give it a bit of credit because we do kind of get the impression that Jaws was the first shark film or one of the first. But obviously, you know, we know from what you just said that they were using real sharks, obviously.
Yeah.
A bit too realistically, unfortunately. But I do remember there were some fairly okay scenes. I don't think it was a great film with a great script or anything, but
4.6 on IMDb. It's available to rent or buy on Prime.
I think it's available somewhere else though as well.
So it's Russian, possibly. Yeah.
No, YouTube.
It's on YouTube. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
So Burt Reynolds. I mean, again, this was the movie that made him a star. It's got to be, isn't it? I'm assuming it's the one that made him a household name.
He was a TV guy. He was a TV actor. It's funny. I think most cinephiles would probably look at his career and say that in terms of great films, it really boils down to this and Boogie Nights, doesn't it?
As a sort of serious actor?
Yes. I mean, obviously, that's the thing. He's very iconic. I mean, you know, Smokey and Cannonball Run and the one with Dolly Parton and everything.
Oh, God, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
Yeah, and then you get this era in the 80s where he plays just a cop in a different town in a different situation. You know, like Sharky's Machine and all those sort of things. Striptease, he got a bit of recognition for, didn't he? I think it was a bit of a comeback for him, Striptease.
Oh, right. I always thought Boogie Nights was a comeback.
Boogie Nights was after.
Boogie Nights was 97, I want to say.
Striptease was 96 and Boogie Nights was 97. Yeah, he went on this real sort of resurgence round about then. Because he was known as an 80s, like late 70s and 80s actor. Mean Machine in the 70s, the American football one. I loved it, you know, those sort of movies.
Yeah. Well, he did quite a lot, didn't he?
He did loads. There's a lot of movies here. When you look
Well, all these, I was looking through the filmographies, all these guys. Ned Beatty is quite famous because he had one scene in Network but got nominated for
amazing scene as well.
Very good, isn't it? Yeah. Apparently he was in All the President's Men. I don't remember him in that. Do you?
I haven't seen that for ages. I've only ever watched it once, and again, that was in my teenage years, and never really went back to it. It's one that I need to go back and see.
That's quite an easy ride as Raging Bull's one, because you get lots of these sort of interesting long shots, and that's an interesting one. Yeah, Ronnie Cox, I would have known later from RoboCop.
That was it.
He dies. He's the corporate boss.
And I'm wondering if I saw RoboCop before I saw this, actually, because RoboCop was 87. I watched this 86, 87, I think, for the first time, you know. He's in Beverly Hills Cop and Total Recall as well.
Total Recall, I think I remember that, yeah. Bill McKinney, who played the rapist, was in First Blood. I remember that.
He was one of the cops, wasn't he, in that, I think?
Yes, with Brian Dennehy.
Yeah. But they're your four main ones, aren't they? There aren't many other faces here, are there? As I say, the cop's played by Dickie. Herbert Coward, the Toothless Man, wasn't an actor. And the rest of the cast were locals, you know.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Burt Reynolds and Ned Beatty were re-teamed. I feel guilty asking you this because it's so difficult, but maybe you know, do you?
It's not the end, is it? Because that was Dom DeLuise.
It's an 80s film that's something to do with the media. There's your clue.
Switching Channels?
Switching Channels, very good.
That's the one with...
Christopher Reeve.
Yeah, and the woman at 9.5 weeks. Kathleen Turner?
Kathleen Turner, yeah.
Where did that come from, eh? Look at
He's good, isn't he? Yeah. Yeah, just going back to James Dickey, he was a poet laureate, wasn't he?
I knew he was a poet, yeah.
And very, very strong character. I guess we'll talk about the sheriff later, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll just sort of
interesting
wind up towards the end now, because after we've got over this amazing, so familiar scene to everybody, we then get another bit of canoe action, you know. Not so much documentary, more actual, you know, full-blown action movie scene here with canoes being split in half. And Ronnie Cox, when you watched him fall out of the boat originally, even on this particular view, it still doesn't look like he gets shot. It looks like he deliberately falls out of the boat.
Yeah, you're right. It's interesting. The director, apparently they talked about it because they left it ambiguous, but there's a theory that he felt so guilty that it wasn't that he committed suicide, but it was almost like he was so guilt-ridden because he's this sort of, you know.
That's how it always looks to me. It looks like he just leans over the side and falls in.
Yeah, it's almost like he lets it happen. But then the thing about you think about it, he's got kids as well. So is he gonna, you know, it's a strange one, isn't it?
Yeah. But instantly, Burt Reynolds, as they get towards the shore, he was shot, he was saying like this.
But then they find his body later and he's not. Do you remember he's got his arm? There's a little bit of trivia. You know, he's got his arm behind his neck?
Yes. Wasn't that a trick he could actually do or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, they weren't going to do it. Ronnie Cox said, well, I'm very double jointed. I can put my arm behind my neck. And they said, yeah, we'll have a bit of that. So I think they actually not examine him as such, but they can't see any bullet. There's no blood.
No.
So we don't think he was shot. So, yeah, I think it's a sort of a bit of a stylistic thing that maybe he'd sort of given up a bit after having to go, you know, having to vote to get rid of this. Yeah. Just one very quickly, a little bit of symbolism. Bobby said, let's bury him. And the idea is maybe he's trying to bury the memory or bury the, you know, because it's a pride thing, isn't it? He says, I don't want anyone finding out about this.
As you said, we're not going to talk about this ever again, sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I think from this point, it's almost like two films, because John Voight, as we said earlier, is forced to become almost Lewis. He's forced to become the alpha male, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Lewis is obviously breaks his leg, and he's got. What do you think of that? Does that look realistic when he's got that massive bone sticking out of his leg, or is that a bit cartoony? Or
I always remember it being quite horrific when I was a kid watching it, thinking, "Oh my God, there's the bit with the leg coming up," and it's. Yeah, I think so. You can't really see what it is. It just looks like a lump of flesh sticking through the wetsuit.
Yeah. But I think he acts it very well, though. I mean, he does look in agony, doesn't he?
Yeah, and the bit that sort of hits home for me in that sequence is as John Voight is making his way, starting to go up the cliff, or they're deciding that that's what they're going to do. It cuts back to Burt Reynolds lying on the rock, and he's shivering. He's got his arms around himself, and his teeth are chattering, and he's absolutely freezing cold.
And we could be pretty sure that was happening in real life.
Absolutely, because he's not moving, is he? And he's soaking wet.
Yeah. There's one line I really like where Lewis is absolutely out of it. He broken his leg, and really good acting. And John Voight says, "What are we going to do? You're the man with the answers." And Lewis kind of grabs him and goes, "Now we get to play the game." But it's not. But it's not. No, but it's not. In this case, it's not cheesy because he's acting it really well.
Yeah, I know.
I know what you mean. I mean, it could be a really cheesy line, but I think on that he gets away with it.
Do you know what?
He goes, "You don't beat the river." That's a bit sort of John Wayne, but
No, but also when you're lost in the movie, that's the sort of thing that you're like, "Yeah, come on, Bert." You punch the air almost. Didn't you?
Yeah. And it's interesting that they're still sort of turning to him, aren't they?
No, their characters are pretty much defined from the outset.
But there's an arc, isn't there?
Yeah.
Mostly John Voight, I suppose, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. John Voight is the character that completely changes. Ned Beatty stays pretty much the same all the way through,
Scott, sorry to interrupt you. Jaws, Brody, scared of the water, has to take over, kills a shark. Very similar, eh? I think we're suddenly realising that they were watching Deliverance, aren't we?
Absolutely. There you go. Steven Spielberg, you're a sham,
my plagiarist.
Sir, you have conned us all these years.
Yeah. No, it just came to me. It's interesting, isn't it? Because he's the everyman, and he's forced to do stuff that he never would believe.
Yeah.
That's it. There you go.
Smile, you son of a bitch, with no teeth, basically. Yes.
Yeah.
And he actually climbs the cliff in real life, doesn't he? Because as we said, there are no stuntmen as such in this movie. So John Voight is climbing up that rock face.
Yeah.
And as I sort of mentioned earlier, there's this wonderful scene where he gets to the top. He's absolutely knackered. And he falls asleep, and the toothless mountain man appears on the horizon just above his shoulder, looking down, armed with a rifle. And you get a recreation of the scene with the deer where John Voight sits back, and he starts loading up the bow, and he starts shaking, and
he's seriously quivering.
Yeah, and it's one arm goes, then the other one goes, and then the head goes a little bit as well, and he starts pulling himself together. And Hitchcockian almost, the suspense as the mountain man turns around and raises the gun. John Voight lets the arrow go. Who's been shot, who's been killed, what's happened, you don't know until the mountain man appears again, and he's got the gun, and you're like, oh my God, he's going to kill him.
Yeah.
And then you just see the arrow sticking through him. He's very cleverly done. You got no inkling at this point who's, you think John Voight's been shot, but then John Voight actually falls on his arrow, doesn't he, at this point? That's what happens.
This is the bit I never understood, because I always had this weird thought, surely it's not the same arrow that he shoots him at, but that's very harrowing. I mean, you think about getting an arrow in your side like that.
Pulling it through as well.
I don't know how would an arrow get in his side just from falling? I don't quite understood
the arrows were attached to the bow, weren't they?
Yeah.
So I don't know at what angle. He fell on it somehow, didn't he, in the panic, basically. It's gone from the back to the front, hasn't it? Yes, it's gone from the back to the front.
It's very good done, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks realistic, and then he just pulls it through, and then you realise that, his first shot actually hit home.
Yeah.
But then the panic sets in because he thinks he's killed an innocent man or the wrong man. because this guy's got teeth, and he puts his fingers into his mouth and wobbles his dentures, and he's like, breathes a sigh of relief, and this guy actually is like toothless. You know?
Yeah. Just before that, as he was climbing the mountain, he loses the picture of his wife and child, which is sort of quite symbolic, isn't it? Did it annoy you? It's a bit too on the nose.
It just annoyed me, the fact that, you know, you're in a life and death situation. All right, you're thinking of your wife and kids, and you're going to be a bit sentimental and all that sort of stuff. But mate, you're halfway up a bloody great big cliff face here. Don't get your wallet out. You know you're going to drop it, and he did. You know.
So he just took the picture out just to have a look at it, did he?
I think he just flipped it open to where the photo was, and of course, there you go, off it goes. You know.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit on the nose, isn't it? Perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, just highlighting the fact that he's a family man, and you know, he wants to get home, and if he doesn't kill whoever's at the top of this mountain, he will never see them again. So he's taking one last look at the photo, possibly. You know?
Yeah, thinking about it, probably didn't really need that, did we? You know, we already get the idea. But brilliant.
Job's done, you know. So they make the way. He makes his way back, and Burt Reynolds' legs all strapped up with an oar at this point, isn't it? I think he's got some great big splint in the shape of an oar. One of the canoes is split in half. There's still no sign of Ronnie Cox at this point, is there? Because the body hasn't appeared yet, has it?
No, they drift down the river, don't they? And they find him. They're basically on their way back, and they find him.
This was the bit as well. They weight the body down, don't they, to hide the evidence. And they're not. This is the bit that always confused me, because towards the end, there's obviously witnesses that says there were 4 people. Your mind's sort of thinking, how are they going to get out of this?
Yeah.
And also, what the hell are they going to tell Ronnie Cox's family? You know?
I know. That's the sort of great unknown about it. Yeah. There's a good bit where they weigh down the body, and then John Voight falls and he gets entangled in the body. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
He sort of literally falls into the body, which was pretty horrible. Yeah, they find Drew, and then they have this kind of almost like a ceremony. You know, he says he promises to look after his kids and stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe Ronnie Cox is religious or, you know, good Christian or something. I don't know. But they do that. They find him. Then we get this thing, as we said, with the arm behind the neck. Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? And then they go down the river, and then they find, to their surprise, that the cars, the mountain, not the mountain men, the Griner brothers have actually delivered their cars, haven't they?
So they're in Aintree. This is Aintree.
Yeah, nothing to do with the Grand National.
And this is the point. This is the point where the people that are waiting over the cars are a family waiting to leave the area, because you can see like the churches on the trailer. They're in the back of, sitting in armchairs in the back of their pickup truck with all their worldly goods surrounding them.
Yeah.
And the 2 cars are sitting there. An ambulance gets called for Burt Reynolds. Ned Beatty, John Voight end up in this hotel.
Yeah, sort of having dinner, aren't they?
Yeah, the Colonial Hotel or something, I think it's called, or a Colonial Guest House or something.
Yeah.
Surrounded by non-actors who are amazing.
Yeah.
I think that just adds to the realism of the whole situation.
Yeah.
But you could tell that there was a lot of this stuff that was ad-lib. The woman that's talking about this 12-inch cucumber that's 10.5 inches round or something, literally randomly talking about it.
Yeah.
Would you like some corn? You know, they're passing things around, and Ned Beatty, after John Voight breaks down at the table, breaks the tension with he says something about the corn, doesn't he? This corn sure is good.
Line, great corn or something.
Yeah. Bang, the whole conversation starts up again, easing the pressure that John Voight's under. And then panic sets in, you know, because he thinks that Ned Beatty may have said the wrong thing, but James Dickey, as the sheriff, is getting a bit pushy and asking the right questions, as it were. You know, and again, this is where the suspense and the tension kicks in again. Just when you thought things were over, the edge of the seat stuff kicks in again.
But again, it's morphed, because now it's a sort of people trying to get away with a crime, you know.
Yeah.
It's gone these. I've got a couple of notes. It's really interesting. Did you notice they have to borrow some clothes? John Voight and Ned Beatty are in the same shirt. Did you notice that? And the idea from the director is that they're kind of in the same boat. You know, they're now the same, because they're both basically criminals. And I like that, because it's not on the nose. It's not someone saying, "Oh, you're wearing the same shirt." You know, that's probably what they would do now, isn't it? You know, they think Oh, the audience are too stupid to work that out, so we'll have to explain it to them. And the other note was that I think John Voight breaks down partly, obviously, from stress, but I think it's to do with just the basic decency of these people. You know, they're just nice people. You know,
and they're unaware of the hell he's actually been, what he has actually done.
Yeah,
these are God-fearing people, and they're sitting at the same table with a murderer, basically. Yeah, you can see that. You can see that. You know, they're God-fearing people. They're taking their church with them on a trailer, for God's sake.
Yeah, oh God, that's amazing, isn't it? That was fantastic when I saw that.
I'm quite happy to spoil the ending at this point as well, because it is a 50-year-old movie, and we have reviewed it before, so don't shy away from talking about the ending, mate.
Yeah. Well, the bit we haven't mentioned, if you don't mind, we haven't actually mentioned one of the. Well, I think we have mentioned it, but one of the big themes of this film is, of course, as we said, about the river being dammed. Yeah. And I've never really thought much about river damming, but the idea is that it's producing the electricity, which is going to power their nice air-conditioned offices in the city.
That's what they say, doesn't it? That is the line about the.
Do they actually say that? Yeah.
There's a line about the air conditioning. Yeah.
But then here's another sort of layer to that: is that as the river's flooding, it's actually helping them get away with the crime, because obviously the body is less likely to be discovered.
Yeah.
As the river gets more and more flooded, so there's so many layers to this thing. They kind of get their story together. They go and visit Burt Reynolds in hospital, and he gives them a wink to say,
"That's brilliant.
Don't worry, mate. You know, I understand what's going on." But it's interesting also that John Voight, as well as being traumatized, he's quite hardened, because I think James Dickey's brilliant. Like the way he goes, "Don't come back here again. Don't do anything like this again." He's got that really like penetrating look in his eye.
It's almost as if he knows. It's almost as if I know what you did. I can't prove it.
No, I think he's twigged. Like, not the whole story.
Yeah.
I think he knows. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you did. I just can't prove it. And I've literally got 24 hours, 48 hours, or whatever before all evidence is going to go. You know, there's no way. You know, you guys have got the better of me, basically, and I hate you for it. And the hatred is there in his face.
But this is the whole thing. I've forgotten about this. I knew this film really well, but it's as we talked before. When you're doing a podcast, you look at it with a different eye, critical eye, and you look a bit closer. And so you've got this whole sort of environmental thing going on. And then the sheriff says, I'd like to see this town die peaceful. You see the flooding river, and then Bobby says as well, I don't think I'll see you for a while. It's like, I've been through this thing, but I don't think I'm going to see you, because I don't want to be reminded of it, you know?
I need to reset a bit. I need to get away from all of this. And it's quite cool, because they're in the taxi, and you can see the empty houses that have been abandoned, and the town that was there previously.
Absolutely.
And they're getting away from death all around. You know, the whole town is dying, not literally the death that they witnessed or caused.
Yeah.
And we could go as deep into this as you want, mate, but
there's layers.
Yeah.
I think we've done our job, haven't we?
I think we have. I mean, it's a 50-year-old movie, and it still appeared as fresh to me as if it were 5 years old watching this last night. And the amount of times I've seen it, I was sort of going into it thinking, oh, do I need to watch this again? Yes, I do, and I'm glad I bloody did. A fascinating and amazing movie, mate, absolutely.
Yeah, the final scene, spoil it, why not? Go and watch it, folks, and then come back. So he awakens from a nightmare, and we see this hand. They did something, I can't remember what they did. They did something to the hand to show that it had been down there a long time.
Yeah, it was look plastic almost.
Yeah, something like that.
I like the fact that, he wakes up from that dream, that nightmare, and then goes back to sleep. And then after all that's finished, it then goes back to the same scene of the river. Right. This is what I noticed for the first time after 40 years of watching this film. And it shows the same scene at the same point of the river, but no hand comes up. And to me, that just indicates they got away with it.
Very good, yes.
That's how I interpreted that. He's having a nightmare that his hand's going to come up, and it's all going to be like revealed that they were the ones that killed blah, blah, blah. But then in reality, it goes to the river in real time, in real life, and there's nothing. It's just a calm river. They've got away with it. That's how I interpreted the final scene.
That's very good, yeah, because they're giving you a hint, but they're not giving it away.
No.
And of course, Carrie, dare we say,
Yeah, it was. Carrie ripped it off 2 years
What happens in Carrie? Is it the hand as well, or is it?
Yeah, basically, Piper Laurie, the mother, gets killed by
Ransom,
Carrie with all the knives and that go flying towards her. She gets pinned to the wall, and then the house collapses in Carrie, and the mother gets buried underneath it. And then the end scene, I think she's actually buried, and there's the gravestone, and Carrie goes to the grave, and Mother's hand comes up through the dirt.
Oh, is it Mother's hand? Oh, it's not Carrie's.
Or is it Carrie's? No, it's the one. It's one of the schoolmates goes to Carrie, don't they? To Carrie's grave, or is it the mother? It's Carrie.
Oh, I haven't seen that. We'll let the listeners. We'll let the listeners work that out. Come on.
It's James Dickey's hand. James Dickey's hand comes out of the dirt. I don't know.
Fuck it, should we find out?
It's Ronnie Cox's double jointed shoulder blade pops out. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's Deliverance.
Man runs to internet to save his film reputation.
Go on.
Him and his his host.
Oh, my reputation was shot years ago.
Oh, was it?
I've got no worries about that. Yeah.
Ah, yes. Sue, the only survivor of the prom, has a nightmare. Oh, yes, of course. It's not real. She goes to lay flowers on the charred remains of Carrie's home. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a sign vandalised in black paint with the words "Carrie White burns in hell." Carrie's bloody arm, that's it, reaches. So they've obviously extended the idea. You've got the whole arm bloodied and actually grabs her.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm okay with that. If you're gonna be inspired by something, at least extend it a little bit. So they've done that. Yeah. It's not a straight copy. So.
Okay. Right. Well, that's Deliverance from 1972.
Do you think we went into enough detail? We need another hour, or
we'll come back after the break and do a little bit.
We'll come back after the break. We'll give you an alternative. Carry on, Deliverance. Yes.
Carry on, Deliverance. That's just about it for another episode. Before we go, rattle off those 3 podcasts for us, mate.
We were saying before, the 100th time you introduce your podcast, you don't do the big build-up anymore. But Film Gold. We did a joint thing with Michael Caine, so this is kind of a joint presentation, but it's your baby, really. Film Gold, yes. Glass Onion on John Lennon is a deep dive into John Lennon. Some of the guests we've had Scott Phipps, we've had a couple of the Quarrymen, then we had Scott Phipps, and then we had who's that bloke who's in 2001? He tossed the bone in the air, and then we had Scott Phipps, and then I had Scott Phipps as well. So. Yes.
That many times? I've been on it that many times.
No, you have.
Okay, then perhaps I have.
Officially 4, but let's say 10.
Okay.
But they're 2-parters, so they count twice.
Oh, right, yeah.
No, it's you and I. We've done various ones. We looked at 1969, and I think maybe the gimmick. I don't like that word, but the selling point of the show is that it's not just let's rank the tracks from Imagine. No offense to the other ones. We look at a year, so we did a whole episode of 1969, and then we looked at Lennon and the Beatles. So and then the other one is Life and Life Only, which is basically it's a search for inner and outer truth. It's a podcast about life, so there's no shortage of material. Because I had the John Lennon one for a couple of years. I'm thinking I'm sure to run out of material eventually. The guy only lived to 40, unfortunately. So I thought I'll do a podcast about life. Yeah, it's sort of psychology and a little bit of alternative media. So yeah.
I recommend all 3 of those.
Thank you.
Wholeheartedly.
Thank you very much for doing this, because it's been really good. I've loved it.
That's it from the Stinking Paws podcast. Anthony, thank you so much, my friend. I will see you very soon. Take care.
Thank you very much.
The management of this theater suggests that for the greater entertainment of your friends who have not yet seen the picture, you will not divulge to anyone the secret of the ending.
Nostradamus, that infernal jamboree is worse than 2 cats on a fence.
You dudes get lost now, you hear?
Good night, ladies. Good night, sir.
When you feel down, try positive thinking. That's what I told them and said. Don't wear a frown. Try positive thinking. Laugh at your troubles instead. You've got to look on the bright side. On hope so much depends. With your confidence sinking, positive thinking helps you on the way, my friend. When things look black, try positive thinking. Treat every season as spring. No glancing back. Try positive thinking, trust what tomorrow may bring. This crazy world that we live in will keep on spinning round. But with good, strong, positive thinking, we'll get together and life won't let us down.
Shut up, you ugly bitch.
Oh, shucks, hope we enjoy it.